Right, we're back.
Back
Literally.
again. Back again.
That was quick.
Yeah, we want to get more consistency, so we'll record a few together.
We're running off a few podcasts, which won't come thick and fast for you, but it's literally a few seconds for us. So in the last podcast, we were chatting about the demands and congratulating Ollie into parenthood and the demands, particularly from a guy's perspective, but in generally parenting. And you touched on one or two key factors, but we're going to start off with one, and that's the beauty of the concept of sleep. And you were relaying the situation being in the gym.
Yeah, I think people see waking up through the night and bad sleep as normal, but it's just common. And this guy came up to me in the gym, and one of my good friends, and he said that I'm frustrated at you because you're getting sleep. I said, what? He said, this is when she was about 11, 12 weeks old. And from about 2-3 weeks, my daughter's been sleeping through the night.
Yeah.
And apart from the odd occasion.
Which is a chiropractic baby. So.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. I mean, after day 4, when we had the first adjustment. So
I'm not saying anything.
Yeah. But when we look at the actual routine from day of conception and from parent, like even before that, the routine of the parents makes a difference. So when you're sleeping and waking, then the baby in the womb, sleeping and waking.
Yeah.
All the way to then when she's born, when she's asleep, when she's waking up, that aspect. When I say to people about improving your sleep, having consistency, because all your circadian rhythms are based on when you're waking and sleeping.
Yeah.
And when we have that first light go into our...
I love it that you identify, through pregnancy, of how that also sets the tone down, because for many people, have a baby and then the sleep element comes in after the first, maybe not in the first few days, because it's usually a week or two later. And that's when they start talking about routine or sleep and all sorts. But I love it that you talk about from that conception even onwards. And that even then, if you take it before conception, you bring in your rhythm of sleep and routine even into before conception. So it's what I love is that you acknowledge that even through pregnancy, that's influencing.
And I think that it's so tempting sometimes, because we'll have times where my daughter will take a little bit longer to get to sleep. Or like last night, we were around a friend until 8 o'clock, and that was normally when she'd get to sleep. So by the time we got home, and we tried to pick her out of the car seat really, really gently. But then you're like, I need to change her nappy before she goes to sleep, which wakes her up. So she took a little bit longer to get to sleep. So that meant we didn't have that much time to have our normal episode to wind down of TV shows. And we get so much into like the routine of baby bedtime, and then we watch Netflix, but we then impact our health because we're trying to watch something when actually sleep is the thing which should be non-negotiable for the odd day if you're at an event or something like that. But I really feel we should have these times when this is when I go to sleep, this is when I wake up, and be very close to those times, as close as possible, because as we say, our whole body clock works on the times we sleep, when hormones rise and low, digestion raises and lowers. And I don't think there's any coincidence when you see these people have good sleep or bad sleep. It's built over years.
But my observation is that I don't think people understand how sleep works.
No.
That's something that when you're tired, you go to bed.
But we're also in a society where we're forced not to sleep.
But I don't think people understand, even just on the pure basic, that dance between cortisol and melatonin.
Yeah.
I don't think they understand how even just the light and darkness of the day influences that. So I see with some patients when they talk about poor sleep, that, as you say, they either quantify it as, well, as like everyone, I don't sleep very well. It's common, but not necessarily the norm. But when I say to them, why do you think that the natural state of the body would be to go to sleep and then wake up when it's ready? What would be your normal, if you left your own devices, what would be your normal rhythm? And straight away they don't identify. They're kind of like, well, what do you mean my normal rhythm? When do you think you are designed when you would normally go to bed, when you would normally wake up? not you have to wake up because you've got to go to work. And so they introduce that element, but they don't understand of that process of that you greatly increase your chance of having good quality sleep by certain factors, like sleep preparation, or it's kind of almost a thing that just seems to happen.
Yep.
And then there's that we've touched on before, that kind of badge of honor, like, well, no, I'm so busy and then I can survive, I can do around in 5 hours sleep. And it's like, well, you can survive, but you're not thriving. And it surprises me how many people don't understand sleep.
Well, people also then say about hormone problems. And if you look at, there's a study that shows that 6 hours or less sleep for just 2 weeks will lower your testosterone by 10 to 15%, which is scary to think about. So we're already in a world where testosterone seems to be getting lower, and people haven't got normal levels of testosterone or high levels of testosterone anyway. So we have mental health issues, we have fertility issues, we have all these things that go on, and then people aren't sleeping. And we work more, we are more stressed.
And also those people who then seek help in those areas, fertility or different or chronic infections, there's not many practitioners out there across the board who are saying, so tell me what your daily routine is. Tell me when you go to sleep. What is your sleep like? What is your nutrition like? Even on a basic level, they'll just say, oh, so this is what we got fertility issues. They're not looking at that lifestyle.
Well, as I've said about our journey with my daughter, we went through IVF. Not once in that whole aspect of the consultation process, okay, there's a bit of different things going on, but we weren't asked about our sleep. We're not, do you sleep through the night? Do you get 7-8 hours of sleep? Is it broken? Are you waking up feeling energized? And another thing that we have is that I was speaking to a client the other day and I said, oh, your cortisol is quite low on your blood test. It was a 9 o'clock or 8:30 blood draw. So your cortisol was actually, that's a good thing. I said, no, it's not in the morning.
No, not then.
It's really low. Is that we need this cortisol
be pumped
rise.
And ready for the day.
So, and it's not necessarily you get up and you're pumped, but within a few, like 15, 30 minutes or so.
Compared to through the day,
like,
that should be the highest.
You're sluggish getting out. Like you should have this kick of cortisol, this stress to wake you up, which then we have the snooze button, which actually studies have shown more chance of heart attack if you use the snooze button, because you're having these false starts. So we have a cortisol awakening response, which we can test for with saliva samples. It is only a snapshot of one day though.
Yeah.
But like say you end up that you have this, you're waking at 5:30, your alarm goes off, but then every 10 minutes you end up just snoozing for like until 6:30. You're having these false starts, and that's stressful on the body. And it doesn't know whether it's coming or going. Then we add caffeine into the mix.
But I'm a classic one, was the alarm is waking us up. We're not waking up in our natural time.
Because we're having that Lumi lamp of light. It's still not.
We need to be here so and so that time, rather than I'm now awake. I found when I'm on holiday, I can, first couple of days I'll sleep in later, but then eventually I'm waking up earlier, because you're now getting into a different rhythm, particularly also you can go to bed when especially if it's a relaxing holiday. So go to bed when you're ready to go to bed.
Talking about sleep and going to bed, where I was talking, must be a couple of years ago now, but the guy that we were doing like a Q&A session, and he said, so like, through the day I'm fine with food, and then comes the evening and all the sugar comes out. And I said to him, I said, look, his name was John. I was like, John, what do you think's happening? I don't know. Well, what is sugar? It's energy, right? It's quick energy. Why would your body need energy? Oh, because I'm tired. So what could you do instead? You could go to bed. How many times do we crave food in the evening, and it's your body saying, look, I'm tired.
Yeah. Cortisol is now down. Yeah. I'm now melatonin's up. I want you now to listen to the body.
Or even things where we do things that are stressful in the evening. Yes, the screens and stuff. We're fighting against technology. We're loving technology. I use AI a lot and all these things, but we're also fighting against it. Where I remember a few years back, I was lucky enough to be speaking in Colombia, and then we whitewater rafted to the rainforest. There was no signal, and we stayed there overnight. It was the best night's sleep ever. And I think I only had about 6 hours sleep, but there were no artificial lights, and we had fires for light, campfires, and it was like a natural soundscape as well. There was rain on the tents, and then you had all the birds and everything. It was amazing. And if I could have that sleep every time, I feel we would only need 6-7 hours sleep.
But then aren't we going also back to a little bit more of how we design? So we're doing some physical graft through the day. Now the darkness comes, you can't work anymore because you've got no light. You're then around uh, collectively as a community
We were
around
sharing
social
nice,
interaction.
positive stories.
Share that, have food.
Yeah.
And then there's no Netflix late movie or something. It's like, oh, I'm tired. I've got a busy day tomorrow. I'm going to bed.
But how do we do that in the winter time? It's all right nowadays where, well, even though like now I'm going to sleep. Yes, it was like the longest day of the year a couple of days ago. So you're trying to sleep and you need blackout blinds. So
we only need blackout blinds because we're trying to go to sleep at a certain time.
Like we should need less sleep in the summertime.
If you look around, I read an article a while ago that suggested that the so-called primitive populations, it suggests that ancestors in this kind of climate in the UK, they would go to sleep early. They would end up sleeping but waking up like midnight. They would do some level of either chores or whatever in the household with like firelight.
Yeah.
And then they would go to sleep again. They would have a phase, but it was led by the body. So it wasn't saying because you would think that, because it got dark early, they would go to bed. They would sleep so much more in winter. And there may well be a bit of that, but they were really more in tune with their natural rhythm of what their body needed. And I think that left their own devices, I think we would sink ourselves into a different routine to what our modern day routine wants us to do. I need to be at work at a certain time. It'd be great to stroll in here late and say, listen, I share a story of a patient of mine. He came in very frustrated with a new member of staff because she rocked in at about 11 o'clock in the morning. And so with what we're talking about, who's right or wrong, and he said, was everything all right? I was a bit worried. And she said, well, I just wasn't feeling it this morning. I just woke up and I just didn't feel like that I needed to get going. So I just rested a little bit longer and then came in. So in a strange way, what we're talking about is that she's actually not too wrong. If she's like, this is how my body feels, I'm going with what I'm doing. But as far as the structure we need to be at work at a certain time and being productive, she was probably jeopardizing. I don't think she got fired on the spot, but she might have been close to it. And that's the hard thing, isn't it? We're living in a world. So what we can control and try and have a routine in that. But I think the key thing for a lot of people is they don't tend to have a sleep preparation strategy. They don't have that sense. As you say, I'm now getting tired. They're going, well, I'll just check the email. I'll just check this. And because I'm feeling tired, that sugary sweet or something that comes in.
Yeah, and we end up having that kick of blue light or something that wakes us up again. And then we have that second wind. I'll tell you another thing with the second wind where people having this cortisol spike in the evening, but a lot of times people will go up, they're tired, they go upstairs, they go to bed, and then we're cleaning our teeth and we put the bathroom light on. It's one of the most intrusive lights in the house because you have mirrors in there and it's usually a really bright light. We live opposite a care home, so we can keep the blinds open to let enough light in and not be intrusive when you clean your teeth. But the amount of times people then just wake up, I'm not saying don't clean your teeth, just try not to turn the light on. And it's amazing now when our daughter's in the bedroom and we have even less light because she's there in her Moses basket and you're trying to just creep round her and everything.
Because you get some people who feel, I've got one patient who saying she can't get to sleep without having the TV on.
Yeah, and some people say they need to use YouTube to get to sleep, but that's why they've got bad sleep.
And it's like, she says, I can't get to sleep unless and it's almost like that white noise.
White noise, yes.
Or that, but it's got to have, so I said, well, what do you have on? She says, well, anything, but as long as it's not, like the news or a news channel, anything that's not that catches you to want to watch to it. It's just like in the background. And I was like, well, it's interesting what strategies people have. Whereas, as you say, left to their own devices and allowed to be more in sync with the rhythm of nature, like when you're away, your body should just naturally drop into sleep.
And this is before we even go into glucose management and dips in glucose and everything. Which again, that's another podcast for another day. It
does surprise me of how for something where people say, well, I can survive on this and there's a concept of sleep, how people really don't understand their sleep cycles and that element of sleep preparation, of getting to sleep and then staying asleep. And
Yeah.
it's such a vital thing, but it's a basic concept that becomes very complicated because it's influenced by so many things. So let us know how sleep and what strategies you use, or how you might have looked at your sleep and changed some things. Be interesting to know.
Maybe we've just put you to sleep.
Yeah, and therefore we've served a purpose. So you're welcome. We'll see you next time.